This is the Investor Mindset Podcast, and I'm Steven Pesavento. And for as long as I can remember, I've been obsessed with understanding how we can think better, how we can be better, and how we can do better. And each episode, we explore lessons on motivation and mindset from the most successful real estate investors and entrepreneurs in the nation. Mindsetters, another phenomenal episode in the can, and you guys are going to love this one with Jason Hartman, a experienced real estate investor. He's been doing this for years, has multiple podcasts, and is very, very insightful about how you can really set yourself up for success, the mindset of how you can defend against some of the challenges that happen during recessions when people start losing houses and losing equity, how you can really set yourself up with a pretty interesting strategy that he gets into. I haven't heard anywhere else, and it's something that made me really think, man, is that something I want to implement in my life? As you're listening to this episode, I encourage you to think, what can I apply myself? What is something that might work for what I'm doing or something that I can file away for the future? So if you love this episode, I encourage you to share it with friends, hit that subscribe button, and drop a 5-star review on your favorite podcasting app. It helps us reach so many more people with our message as we're out here helping people live a better life every day through real estate. So let's jump into this episode. All right, guys, welcome back to the Investor Mindset Podcast. I am very excited to have Jason Hartman in the studio today. How you doing, Jason?
Good, Steve. It's great to be here.
It is really great. And Jason is the CEO of Platinum Properties Real Estate, Hartman Media Networks, and several other companies. I don't know how he does all of it. He's involved in a ton of different business ventures, helping investors buy turnkey properties and gain long-term financial wealth. You excited to jump into things?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how I do it either, by the way, to answer that question. So don't ask that question.
All right.
I think I'm a little overextended.
Sounds like it, but you're getting it done. But why don't we start out by taking a look back earlier in your life? What events or influences from your childhood shaped who you are today?
You know, I think a real turning point in my life was, number one, when I was 16 years old. I grew up poor. I lived in Los Angeles. I had enough to eat, I'll put it that way, but we certainly didn't live the high life growing up. And I remember I saw an infomercial from a real estate guru when I was 16 years old. I got his book. I read 3 chapters. And then my mom picked it up, read the rest. She got really interested in the topic. 2 years later, I was about to graduate from high school. I went to a real estate seminar. And shortly before that, actually, I discovered my 3 big mentors that really changed my life. Dennis Waitley, Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, and Earl Nightingale. And, those guys gave the general philosophy, not about real estate investing per se, but really a good core philosophy for life and business success.
So at a very early age, you'd been hooked into this idea that real estate could be a vehicle. How did that end up manifesting from age 16 to where you're at now? How quickly did you take advantage of that idea, or is it something that kind of brewed for a little while before you ended up acting?
Yeah, great question. Well, I was in high school, so what did I know at that age, right? But when I was 18, I went to a big weekend-long real estate seminar, and I didn't understand what they were talking about most of the time from the stage. And so I decided I would just learn the basics. And where do you learn the basics? Just go get your real estate license. So that next week, literally, I shopped around for real estate schools. I enrolled in Century 21 Real Estate School for $99. And by my first year of college, I got my real estate license. And that was just before my 20th birthday. And then I bought my first rental property as I was selling real estate part-time to a few different clients. I bought my first rental property from one of them who wanted me to list it for him and sell it. And I was 20 years old at that point, and that was the start. And interestingly, Stephen, my first rental property, some could argue that was a bad experience. And I think a turning point, because I know you're all about mindset on this show, a real turning point could have been I could have easily given up after that experience. My very first tenant I ever had, when I was 20 years old, I had to evict them. They didn't pay the rent. They left the house in terrible shape. It was a little condo in Huntington Beach, California on Coventry Lane. And, a lot of people would have just given up. at that point. They would have just said, to heck with this. This real estate thing doesn't work. I'm sure glad I didn't, though, because I've made a ton of money over the years investing in real estate with my own portfolio. And then also the business side of it in helping clients invest in properties, which has always been my first love. And so it's really been a great ride since then.
And what was it back then, or what do you think it was that gave you that power to not give up, to not say, I quit right now, and to kind of persist through it so that you can be the Jason Hartman we all know today?
Well, I love the concept of your show. That's exactly the answer. The title of your show answers the question, investor mindset, right? And I think that consuming so much of Zig Ziglar, Dennis Waitley, Jim Rohn, and Earl Nightingale in those very formative years when honestly I was going down the wrong path. My attitude was not good. I was not destined to be a winner in life. Those listening to those audio cassette tapes, if any of your audience knows what that is, it was a little thing about this size deck of cards, and it had a little tape in it, and you put it into a player and listen to it. And I just used to listen to those audio tapes over and over and over again to really like internalize all of that material. Later, it was Og Mandino and a great little book that he's got I'd highly recommend called Mission Success. Particularly, there's a poem inside of Mission Success. It's about 5 minutes long to read it, so it's a long poem. And it's called The Seeds of Success. And that was very, very impactful on my life.
I will have to read that. I love Og and some of his stuff. I haven't read that poem, but tell me, obviously you're doing a lot of different things now, but what is your primary focus as an investor, or what is it that you do for your clients right now?
Yeah, so I've got my own real estate portfolio. I just sold one of my apartment complexes that I owned with a client of mine, doing a 1031 exchange on that. I've done many 1031 exchanges. Income property, as I always say, is the most tax-favored vehicle in America and the most historically proven asset class in the entire world. I'm always doing my own stuff with my portfolio, but I'm also I have a company that helps clients invest nationwide, and we've done thousands of transactions over the years in helping people invest in many different states. For example, Tennessee, Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Indiana, others, not just those, but those would kind of be some highlights. In these sort of linear markets where the properties don't appreciate very quickly, but they have very nice cash flow and very nice yield characteristics, those are the markets we like the best. And that's what's keeping me mostly busy. I've also got a real estate software company called Real Estate Tools that helps people evaluate which properties to buy or not buy, and then helps them track the properties after they own them and track and manage them.
So in the business where you're actually helping people, are you doing turnkey single family properties? Are you raising capital for larger assets, or what's that focus look like?
Yeah, good question. We don't do any capital raising or any syndication. We're really all about the direct investor. In fact, I have some of my teachings called the 10 Commandments of Successful Investing. One that's been particularly well received by listeners to my podcast and people that come to our conferences is commandment number 3, and it says, "Thou shalt maintain control," and it's all about being a direct investor. So we really just help people directly invest, mostly in single-family homes. That's the core of our business. But we do have some apartments that we've done over the years, some multifamily, and then I also own a mobile home park with that same client I just sold the apartment complex with. And we do some other stuff like that, but the core is definitely single family.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So over the years in your experience, I'm sure you've ran into some times that you hit a big challenge or what some would call a failure. Will you share with us one of those stories and what you learned from that experience?
Well, has anybody listening heard of the Great Recession? Yeah, just over 10 years ago, we saw the worst economy that we had in 7 decades. I mean, it was pretty tough. And that was certainly a landmark in my career. I'd been through a couple other recessions before, but none that severe. And, that was certainly a time to reevaluate and change things. And one of the things, and this is going to sound very counterintuitive and very odd to some of your listeners, but it's the best advice. And I noticed what I'm about to say after the Hurricane Katrina disaster. So that was a couple years before the Great Recession. But everybody, if you just remember back to the absolute tragedy that hit the Gulf Coast. And I remember reading many times in the news about how the attorneys general for 6 states went to the big mortgage companies and made a deal saying that they had to have a moratorium on mortgage payments for at least 6 months because people were in dire straits, having their houses destroyed and their properties destroyed after Hurricane Katrina hit. And, it made me think, Stephen, I came up with this concept, and it really has served me and, frankly, millions and millions of other people very well. And they may not even realize it. And that's why I want to share it today. So here it is. Remember something. In real estate deals, the best insurance you can have, the best insurance, is a high loan balance. I know you're nodding in a funny way right now as I see you on the screen. That's counterintuitive to some. But what it really means is that if you think about it, when the Great Recession came along, when natural disasters have come along, the people that got a break, the people that got some help, were the people that had the least amount of equity in their properties, the people that had the most leverage, the highest loan balance. Don't believe me? Well, just look at history, okay? During the Great Recession, for example, okay, so during Katrina, let's go in order, okay? So during Katrina, if you owned your house free and clear, or if you had 50% equity in a very low mortgage payment, when the attorneys general made that deal with the big mortgage companies, with Countrywide, et cetera, saying, there's a moratorium on mortgage payments. You can't charge anybody for X amount of time during the recovery effort. What if you had a small mortgage payment? How much benefit would you have received? What if you had a free and clear home with no mortgage payment? How much benefit would you have received? Zero is the answer, okay? Zero benefit. And then the Great Recession came along, and we moved into this era of loan modifications, short sales, workouts, people living in their house for 3 years for free, not paying a mortgage, okay? Investors renting properties that they owned and receiving the rent, but still not paying the mortgage for sometimes 1 or 2 or even 3 years at a time, okay? Who got the benefits, right? It wasn't the person who did the quote unquote right thing, okay, that we used to believe was the right thing. It was the people with the high loan balances. And I remember one of our clients lost his job during that time. And he had a bunch of investment properties that he bought through our network, and he had his own home. And a very conservative couple, and they had 2 kids. And I remember talking to the man one day, and I said, how's it going with your portfolio? And he said, you know what? I've been able to get loan modifications on all of my investment properties. Every one of them, they did a workout or a modification with me, meaning they lowered the payment. They said, it'll be 0 interest for 2 years, then it'll be 2% interest, and then it'll be 3% interest. I mean, they forgave a certain amount of balance or allowed a moratorium on payments. And I said, well, and he went on to talk about it, and he said the problem he was having was on his own home, the home he lived in for many, many years and raised his kids in. And I said, why? What's the problem? And he said, well, I tried to get a loan modification on that property, but they said I had too much equity.
Hmm. Yeah.
There's the
So
lesson.
really,
Okay.
what you're saying, and I've never heard of it
It's
talked about like this,
counterintuitive. I know
but it,
people will be
but it may,
skeptical. Yeah.
but it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense that what you're saying is that the banks have they have a good reason, they have motivation to work with you when you're in a situation where there's not a lot of equity in there. But
Right.
when you're the person in 2008 who had 50% equity in their home and the property value dropped by 50%, you lost 50% of money that was actually in your net worth versus the person who had just 3% or 5% of
Right.
that equity in that property. They ended up losing almost nothing. They lost maybe the home, but they didn't actually end up losing real net worth income.
So, as they say on those sleazy infomercials, but wait, there's more. Okay. But wait, there's more, because it's even more than what you said. You summed it up very well. There's a whole nother layer to it. So, let's go to the other layer. The other layer is that if you are a lender, say you're Bank of America, and you've got, you're looking at a loan portfolio of 100,000 mortgages, right? And and maybe 10,000 of those 100,000 mortgages in one of your mortgage pools is in default. They're not paying. People are behind on the payments. Okay. If you're looking at that portfolio, and then you have your people do an analysis of how much equity those properties have, and say you want to segment that portfolio, and you look at, okay, we got 10,000 loans in default, and 7,000 of them have less than 10% equity, and 3,000 of them have 50% equity. You will actually, as a lender, I promise, you will literally become predatory on the people who have equity, and you will foreclose on them as quick as you can, because you've got insurance, that you've got something there to foreclose on, versus the people with no equity. You're going to go to them and you're going to say, hey, please, what can we do to help? Let's work this out. Don't default anymore. We'll lower the payment. We'll have some forgiveness in there, or we'll let you do a short sale so you can get out of it, and we'll just lop off part of our loan balance. It's counterintuitive, but I realized this in the '90s when I was in traditional real estate. I owned a traditional real estate company for 8 years. I ended up selling that to Coldwell Banker in '05. But in the '90s, I remember during a big recession in Southern California, where I'm from, uh, they are, well, used to be from, from a while ago. Now I live in Florida. I would see these people that were living in their house for like, 10 months, 18 months, 2 years, not paying a mortgage. And I'm thinking, that is so unfair, because those people didn't do the right thing. And the right thing was to delay gratification, to pay your mortgage down, to not be too in debt. But the world doesn't reward that. It's wrong. Listen, I don't agree with any of this. I'm just saying it's the way it is.
So your big takeaway here is that when you're heading into a recession, you actually want
Which
to
you
have,
don't know if you're heading into a
which you
recession,
don't know,
Yeah.
but at any given time, you want to be in a position where you're highly leveraged, because by being highly leveraged, you have more negotiating power with a bank. That is a mindset I've never heard of before. But what you're also saying is don't necessarily live beyond your means. You want to have that cash and capital to be able to hold on to the property shall you need to.
Right. You just want to have that capital allocated outside of the equity. You want to have that money in the bank or in other investments, so that you can, you have room to maneuver. Okay. I teach a strategy, and look, I'm not recommending consumer debt or anything like that. I have no debt, okay, except
Sure.
mortgages, right? I mean, I lease my car, okay. But,
Yeah.
I have lots of money in savings and in investments and stuff like that, right? I would never recommend any kind of consumer debt or anything along those lines. But real estate debt is different, because it's secured by the property, and hopefully it's long term fixed rate, investment grade debt. And it's tax deductible. It's got very low interest rates. It's very favorable debt. This is good debt. Okay. So I'm not saying every kind of debt is good. They are not all created equal. I teach a strategy called refi till you die, which is the most tax efficient way to extract the wealth from your real estate portfolio. And basically, what it shows people is how to acquire their portfolio originally and then go ahead and keep that portfolio over time, let it appreciate, let the tenants pay down the mortgages for you. And then after, 7 to 12 years, somewhere in that ballpark, there's going to be a very good time, maybe even sooner, to refinance the properties. Okay, refinance the whole portfolio. You pull the money out of that refi, it's a cash out refi, okay? And you use that money for your lifestyle or for other investments. And then basically there's no tax on that borrowed money. See, there's no tax on borrowed money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're constantly letting the tenants pay the property down. You're letting inflation pay the property down. I teach another strategy I call inflation-induced debt destruction. Inflation-induced debt destruction. I know it's a tongue twister. Say it 10 times fast. and that strategy basically pays off your mortgages for you. And then when you get to a good cycle where there's a good spot to refi, where rates are really good, you refinance, you pull the cash out, you use that to buy more properties, or you use it for your lifestyle and it's tax-free.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's not something that I've heard before, but I can follow the logic there, and it seems like it's something that, as the listeners, as you guys are thinking about this, it might be something to consider. Well, how am I currently structured? Are you trying to pay down all of your mortgages so you don't have any debt, or is there actually a valuable opportunity to do exactly the opposite? So, Jason, I'm really curious here.
The mortgage is an asset. You've got to realize if it's a long-term, fixed rate, low rate mortgage, that is a huge asset. Do not pay it off. Keep the asset. The only way you want to pay that off is through refinance. That's it. Don't pay it off. And that refinance hopefully is a cash out refi where you can get money back tax-free. Go ahead.
So tell me, why do you think you've succeeded in it within an industry where so many other people have failed or maybe not even gotten started?
Yeah. So your show is about mindset. So circling back to that and not getting tactical, right? Number one, a sign of a winner and a sign of maturity. We all get discouraged about some people just kind of haven't grown up yet, right? There's a lot of children walking around in adult bodies out there, and we've all met them. Okay. A sign of maturity is the ability to delay gratification for a longer term, bigger thing, right? We always face the choice every single day, many times a day. Do we get more pleasure or hedonism now? Do we eat that chocolate bar that tastes so good? Or are we going to be more focused on the long-term health and wellness, right? It's a trade-off, right? It's instant gratification versus long-term. Do we save money to invest, or do we blow our cash and party and buy a lot of consumer goods and buy a new boat, okay? Or most people are so focused on the appearances of wealth that they're going to lose out on the opportunity to create real wealth. So part of the investor mindset has to be the ability and the willingness to delay gratification. Okay, that is a very important thing. And if you think about it, with the individual or with society, the countries that delay gratification are the winning countries. The people that delay gratification are the winning people. Okay, so we always face that choice: pleasure now or more pleasure later. And when we take it later and we don't need it now, it multiplies dramatically with what Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world, compound interest. Now, I don't mean like boring interest, like getting, 2% or 5% or 8% even. But when it's income property, you can get returns upwards of 15, 20, 25%. all in because it's a multi-dimensional asset class. So delay gratification to save for those down payments so you can buy another property. Stop blowing your money. Okay. That's definitely one part of the mindset.
It's such a good reminder because so many of us, we get into this cycle where we're working so hard and we're doing all the stuff that we know we need to do, and then we think, well, we need to celebrate, we need to treat ourselves,
Right.
but
Yeah.
actually that's the moment that we need to tighten the belt and make sure that we continue to do the right thing so that we can enjoy it, in the future.
Let me make one comment about that. You're absolutely right. What you said is 100% right. I do think there is a small component, well, not a small component, but there is cause for some small celebrations along the way. And why I say that is because when we talk about the investor mindset, okay, it's important to our own psychology to reward ourselves along the way. It's just that those rewards should be proportional, okay? They shouldn't be extravagant. You don't do one flip and buy a Ferrari. That's what an idiot does. Okay. You go on a little vacation or have a spa day or something like that, right? Or buy yourself something you've been wanting. Okay. But not extravagant, right? Have some small celebrations and don't be too frugal with yourself, okay? Because that's the whole point. I mean, look, the whole point is to make money to enjoy a bigger, better lifestyle. But, keep it in check. That's all. And everybody has to use their own judgment on that.
I couldn't agree more. I think we got to live in the present moment, but that doesn't mean we have to forego the future just so that we can be gluttonous within that present moment. But
Right.
so here's a big question for you. How would you define success and what is success to you?
Oh, well, I think success is the freedom to do what you want to do. Um, However, I want to say with that, I don't think retirement is a good idea. I could have retired many, many years ago, and I'm still working, and I'm working kind of hard sometimes. But I think it's important to be engaged in things. I think it's good for us. And, the people that live the longest are the people who are caught up in the next project all the time, right? And the idea of laying on a beach just doesn't appeal to me. Okay, maybe to some people, but that is it's about having choices, right? It's about being able to make choices and not being compelled where you have to work, right? So that would be economic success. But if you want to talk about general success, then that's a much broader topic, right? But economically, I think that that's what financial independence is all about.
Well, what is general success to you since you opened up the door?
Well, I'm not the authority on this one. Okay, first of
But for
all, but
you,
I like the definition that Earl Nightingale used, or really Dennis Waitley used. Is he sort of put an add-on to Earl Nightingale's concept, and Earl Nightingale was one of his mentors. By the way, I had Dennis Waitley on my podcast a few years back, and he was great. And They define success as the progressive realization of a worthy goal that is being realized for the benefit of others rather than at their expense. So, it's making the world a better place. But notice that they use the word progressive realization, right? It's not about the one big break. It's not about when my ship comes in. It's not about winning the lottery. It's not about making that one big giant deal. It's the progressive realization. Why is that progressive statement so important? Because the progressive realization means we are engaged on an ongoing basis in the do it yourself project known as your life. It's a do it yourself project, right? And that road to success is always under construction. You never get there. It's never a thing, that old quote by Cervantes, the journey is better than the end, right? And I think there is a faulty mindset out there that it's like, this one big day, or this one big deal. And it's not like that. That's just not how it works. I mean, When it works that way, with like the lottery winners, we've all heard about the studies of these lottery winners. 2 years later, they're broke, they win $1 zillion. And, you can look at that on another scale in like the NFL, right? Why are all these professional athletes, how is it that they make all this money and go bankrupt? That's just crazy. It's because they don't have any discipline. They're not engaged in life. They don't have the progressive mentality.
So with that definition of success in mind and on the road to success that you're talking about, do you feel successful?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Great to hear.
Yeah.
So we've made it to the growth rapid fire round where the questions are quick, but the answers don't need to be. Tell me, what's a book that's impacted your life the most or one you're excited about right now?
How can I pick just one?
I know, right? I know.
There are so many great books, but I always go back to the classic, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. That's an awesome book. And it covers so much ground and it's really fantastic. We talked a lot about Dennis Waitley and Earl Nightingale, and the book that really did change my life is called The Psychology of Winning: 10 Habits of a Total Winner. It's a very short little book, and it's fantastic. Og Mandino's Seeds of Success or Mission Success, really good. I mean, there's so many of them. I know you asked me for one, but there you go. I gave you
fantastic. I love it. So from an inspiration standpoint, talk to me about how mentorship has impacted your life and how you look at finding a great mentor.
So mentors are an interesting topic. In real life, I think mentors need to be, because they're human, they need to be given a break in the sense that they should be siloed, right? And what I mean by that is that don't expect one person to fulfill your, role model example for everything in life, right? One person can be your financial role model, while another person is your relationship role model, where another person is your mindset role model, okay? Because there's all these different areas. Don't expect one person to fulfill all of that. It very rarely happens, okay? First of all. So I think that the mentors available mostly need to be considered mentors we don't know personally, okay? Because there's a lot more selection, all right? So when I talk about my 4 great mentors, Dennis Waitley, Earl Nightingale, Zig Ziglar, and Jim Rohn, I did meet Jim Rohn and Dennis Waitley, and I met Zig Ziglar. Actually, I was actually on a speaking tour with Zig Ziglar. Can't forget to mention that. And then Tony Robbins I met later a few times as well. And I think there's a lot more selection of mentors that are through books and audios and things like that than there are in your personal life. But the one way that if you want to meet them firsthand, and maybe they're not really formally mentoring you, but I think you can get in contact with more successful people by joining a mastermind group. And usually that's got to be a paid mastermind group. You might get lucky and just have an informal one that you're invited to or that you start with people you know. But the likelihood is you're going to have to pay to join a mastermind group. And instantly you will up-level the people you're around. Jim Rohn used to say, your income will be the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. Folks, there is no rule or law saying that you have to be friends with the 5 people you were friends with in high school 10, 20, 30 years later, okay? So get out of your bubble and go meet some friends that are, achieving more than you, that are above you, that stretch you. Just by hanging around them, you will become a bigger, better, more successful person.
That's such great advice. I mean, there's so much there to unpack. I hope you guys will rewind and listen to that again. And as we close out here on purpose, what drives you to live your best life every day?
Well, one is what I went back to, and it's not very sexy, but it's just the idea that I don't think retirement is good for us. I think it's very important that we all be engaged in stuff. But what really turns me on? Well, as an entrepreneur and an investor, I love building things and creating things. Whether it be fixing up a property I own, or creating a new idea that works in the marketplace, or something like that, or creating new content. People have always told me for the last 15 years that my real estate investing philosophies are very original. They've never heard them anywhere before, and they haven't. And I know that because they came out of my own head. Okay. Inflation-induced debt destruction, refi till you die, a zillion other strategies that I teach and talk about on my podcast and at my conferences. So I love creating that stuff. It's really fascinating to see, how can we look at this a different way, and maybe use this strategy along with that strategy and kind of combine things to make a whole new strategy. I think that's really a fascinating thing to do. I'm really into consumer advocacy and just creating content. I very much like to do that. I like to learn stuff and then teach what I've learned to other people.
Well, you've definitely been doing a good job of that here. And I know you've been putting out a lot of content for many years and inspired a lot. So we thank you so much for that. Where can people find out more about you or get in touch?
Yeah, my website's real easy. That's jasonhartman.com, just JASONHARTMAN.com. And then, of course, my podcast. I've got a whole bunch of podcasts on a variety of topics, mainly personal finance, but also longevity and a whole bunch of other interesting topics. So any podcast platform, just search Jason Hartman and you'll find them.
Wonderful. We'll include links to your website and some of those in the show notes. So thank you so much, Jason. Look forward to the next time we get to do this again.
All right. Thanks again, and keep the right mindset and happy investing.
Thank you for listening to the Investor Mindset Podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with a friend. Head over to theinvestormindset.com to join the Insider Club, where we share tools and strategies from the top investors and entrepreneurs on how to take it to the next level.